In 43 years on this bench, I have seen almost everything, but every once in a while someone walks through that door and reminds me exactly why I became a judge in the first place. And I need you to hear this story, because what happened in my courtroom on the morning of November 15th, 2024, is the kind of thing that changes a person. It changed me, and I have been doing this a very long time. Are you ready for this? Stick with me from the very beginning, because this story has a twist at the center that had my entire courtroom on its feet, and I promise you have never heard anything like it. Let's go. It was a Thursday morning. The docket was packed. We had 17 cases lined up before 10 o'clock, and my clerk, Michael, was already looking tired. The Providence courthouse was cold. November in Rhode Island has a way of cutting right through you. I walked in at exactly 8:51 a.m., and I could feel it. Some mornings have a different kind of energy. This was one of those mornings. The first few cases went by quickly. Speeding tickets, expired registrations, the usual. And then case number 2024 PV 7734 was called. The name on the docket was Maria Santos. The charge was a parking violation on Eddy Street in Providence, issued at 2:47 in the morning on November 14th. The fine was $85. Now, $85 does not sound like much. To some people in that room, $85 is a rounding error, but I have been a judge long enough to know that $85 can mean everything to the right person. And when Maria Santos walked to that podium, I knew immediately she was that person. She was 38 years old, small frame, tired eyes, the kind of tired that does not come from one bad night of sleep. That is the tired that comes from years of giving everything you have to other people and keeping nothing for yourself. She was wearing dark blue scrubs with a small Rhode Island Hospital emblem on the left shoulder. Her hair was pulled back tight. No jewelry except two small gold stud earrings that looked like they had been in her ears for a decade. Her shoes were clean nursing sneakers, the white gone slightly gray from 1,000 long shifts on hospital floors. She clutched a folder of papers against her chest with both hands like it was the most precious thing in the world. I looked at her and I said, "Ma'am, tell me about your night." She cleared her throat. She said, "Your Honor, my name is Maria Santos. I'm a registered nurse. I've been working at Rhode Island Hospital for 11 years. On the night of November 13th, I got a call at 8:15 p.m. asking me to come in for an emergency double shift. A nurse in our pediatric cardiac unit had a family emergency. I was asked to cover. I did not hesitate." She pressed her lips together, holding herself together carefully. She said, "I have 2 children. My son Carlos is 9. My daughter Sophia is 6. Their father has not been in the picture for 4 years. It is just me. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Elaine Cooper on William Street, and she came over to watch my kids, even though it was almost 9 at night. I got to the hospital at 9:22 p.m. I did not leave until 6:35 in the morning. 9 hours. 9 hours on her feet in a pediatric cardiac unit, helping keep children alive. 11 years of nights like that. And somewhere in the middle of all that, at 2:47 in the morning on a street she had driven down hundreds of times on her way to work, Officer Danny Reeves of the Providence Police Department, badge number 4417, had walked past her car on Eddy Street and written her a ticket. The meter had expired. Parking meters on that block of Eddy Street switched to a 2-hour limit after 10 p.m. Maria had parked at 9:19 p.m., paid for 2 hours, and gone inside to save children's lives. At 2:47 a.m., the meter was long expired because she was too busy keeping a 6-year-old's heart beating to come outside and feed it. I looked at that ticket. I looked at Maria Santos, and then I looked at the gallery, because behind her, someone else was waiting his turn with a very different kind of energy. And that energy was about to poison this entire courtroom. His name was Brandon Ashworth III, 34 years old, son of Richard Ashworth Jr., who ran Ashworth Capital Group out of a suite on Westminster Street. Brandon had walked into my courtroom at 8:55 that morning, and I noticed him immediately. You could not miss him. He was wearing a camel-colored cashmere overcoat from Brunello Cucinelli that retailed for $4,200. Underneath it was a slim black suit, a Patek Philippe watch on his left wrist, Berluti oxblood leather shoes, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He smelled like expensive cologne from across the room. He was leaning back in the gallery bench with one arm draped over the back of it like he was at a dinner party. He kept looking at his phone. When Michael the clerk told him to put the phone away, he looked up, gave a slow smile, and set the phone face down on his knee instead of his pocket. A small act of defiance. I noticed it. I always notice the small things. Brandon Ashworth III had 4 cases before me that morning, cases 2024 TR 8801 through 2024 TR 8804, reckless operation on Dudley Street on October 3rd, failure to stop at a red light on Broad and Prairie on October 19th, expired registration filed October 31st. And this one made me sit up straight. Excessive speed in a hospital zone on Eddy Street on November 2nd, 49 miles per hour, in a 25-mile-per-hour hospital zone, right outside Rhode Island Hospital, right where Maria Santos went every night to take care of sick children. His total fines came to $2,460. To Brandon Ashworth III, that was probably what he spent on dinner for 2. He had already postponed his court date twice, and now here he was with that little smile on his face. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. If you have ever watched someone humble and good get ground down by a system that seems to favor the careless and the privileged, hit that subscribe button right now, because this channel is about the moments when justice actually works, and this story is one of the best ones I have ever told. Do not go anywhere. I turned back to Maria Santos. I said, "Miss Santos, do you have documentation?" She opened her folder. She had everything. A time-in sheet stamped 9:22 p.m. The emergency coverage request from head nurse Patricia Coleman, RN, at 8:15 p.m. The hospital parking record showing her car at 9:19 p.m. A timeout sheet stamped 6:35 a.m. And then she pulled out one more piece of paper. Her hands were shaking just a little bit. She said, "Your Honor, I also brought this." It was a medical summary, not detailed, not identifying any patient, just enough to confirm that on the night of November 13th into the morning of November 14th, the pediatric cardiac unit at Rhode Island Hospital had handled a critical emergency involving a minor patient. Maria had been the primary floor nurse on that case. The attending physician was Dr. Raymond Chu. He had signed the summary personally. At the bottom, Dr. Chu had handwritten 6 words I will never forget. He wrote, "Nurse Santos saved this child's life." The courtroom went quiet, really quiet. The kind of quiet that only happens when something true and important has just filled the air. I thought about Mrs. Elaine Cooper on William Street getting out of bed at 9 o'clock at night so that her neighbor could go save a life. That is the kind of neighbor, the kind of human being that makes a city real. I thought about little Carlos and Sophia waking up in the morning with their mom not home yet, maybe making their own cereal, maybe waiting by the window. I thought about a parking meter ticking away on Eddy Street at 2:47 in the morning while their mother had her hands on a child's chart trying to keep that child breathing. $85. And then I heard it. From the gallery, low, dismissive, barely audible but loud enough. Brandon Ashworth III had let out a slow, contemptuous laugh. Not a real laugh, the kind that says something is beneath you. He leaned toward his personal attorney, Craig Feldstein of Feldstein and Harlow on Atwells Avenue, and said just clearly enough, "Is this really what they use court time for?" I set down my pen. I looked at Brandon Ashworth III. I said, "Sir, is there something you would like to say to this court?" He looked up from his phone. He said, "No, Your Honor, I'm just ready whenever you are." That smile again. I kept my voice steady. I said, "Then you will give Miss Santos the same respect you expect this court to give you. Am I clear?" He nodded once, slowly, like he was doing me a favor. I turned back to Maria. I said, "Miss Santos, do you have anything else you want to tell me?" She looked at me. She said, "Your Honor, I know the ticket is technically correct. I just cannot afford $85 right now. My daughter had an ear infection last month and the co-pays added up. I know that is not the court's problem. I am not asking for special treatment. I am just asking you to understand." She was not demanding anything. She was just standing there with her documents and her dignity, telling the truth. I said, Mrs. Santos, this case is dismissed completely. You owe nothing. She closed her eyes for just a moment. When she opened them, she said, Thank you, Your Honor. I said, No, thank you. You are the reason Rhode Island Hospital is one of the finest hospitals in this country. You are the reason children go home to their parents. The rest of us owe you a debt that an $85 fine cannot begin to measure. You are not a defendant in my courtroom today, Ms. Santos. You are a hero, and I want everyone in this room to hear me say that. She put her hand over her mouth. She turned back toward the gallery, and I saw a small woman in the third row, gray hair, winter coat, who I later learned was Mrs. Elaine Cooper herself, who had come with Maria to support her. Mrs. Cooper was crying. She was clapping, and the whole courtroom started clapping with her. Now, stay with me, because what I just told you was the beautiful part. What came next was something else entirely. And if you think you already know where this story is going, I promise you that you do not. Keep watching, because what I am about to tell you is the part that went absolutely viral, and it involves a phone, a social media post, and a secret that changed everything in that courtroom in about 60 seconds. Brandon Ashworth III stood up and approached the podium. He adjusted his cufflinks. The cashmere coat draped over one arm. Patek Philippe catching the fluorescent light. He set a leather folder on the podium. He said, Your Honor, I think we can handle this pretty quickly. I said, We will handle it as thoroughly as it requires. Let us start with case 2024 TR 8804, excessive speed in a hospital zone, November 2nd, Eddy Street, 49 miles per hour. Something shifted in his face. Then the smile came back. He said, Your Honor, I was in a hurry. I had a business meeting. I understand that is not an excuse, and I am prepared to pay whatever the fine is. I said, You were doing 49 miles per hour past a hospital where sick children are treated, where nurses like Ms. Santos work through the night to keep those children alive. 49 miles per hour past a crosswalk, past a building full of people fighting to stay alive and people fighting to keep them there. He said, I understand, Your Honor. It was a lapse in judgment. The smile was thinner now, but still there. And then my clerk, Michael, stepped forward and placed a printed document on my bench. Officer Reeves, badge 4407, had been watching from the back of the gallery on his day off. He had been on his phone during Maria Santos's testimony. He had found something. On Instagram, under the handle of Brandon AII, a verified account with 62,000 followers, there was a post made at 9:14 a.m. that very morning, 14 minutes before Brandon walked into my courtroom. It was a photograph taken from the courthouse entrance. The caption read, word for word, heading in to deal with some low-level nonsense. When you're the Ashworth family, even the city of Providence is just another inconvenience to manage. See you on the other side. So Providence, paid problem, below my pay grade. 62,000 followers, 347 likes in 14 minutes. I looked at that post. I looked at Brandon Ashworth III in his Berluti shoes. I looked at the words low-level nonsense and below my pay grade. I looked at the fact that he had posted that photo while Maria Santos was in the same building trying to figure out if she could afford an $85 ticket. I said very quietly, Mr. Ashworth, are you familiar with the Instagram account, R. Brandon ARE? The smile disappeared. He said, Your Honor, I said, yes or no. He said, yes, that is my account. I said, did you post a photograph from this courthouse this morning at 9:14 a.m.? His attorney said, Your Honor, I would ask for a moment. I said, Mr. Feldstein, your client can answer. Brandon said, yes, I posted that. Now here's the part where things went from bad to catastrophic, and I want you to hold on because what happened next is not something I could have scripted in 43 years. Stay right here with me. This is the moment everything changed. Standing in the back of my courtroom was a woman I did not recognize, gray blazer, dark slacks, credential wallet held open. She said, Your Honor, my name is Special Agent Sandra Torres, Rhode Island Field Office, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I have been waiting for the right moment. I believe that moment is now. Picture that courtroom. Picture every single person going completely still. Mr. Feldstein turned white. Brandon did not move. Mrs. Elaine Cooper stopped crying. Maria Santos looked up from the front row. Agent Torres walked forward and handed my bailiff a sealed federal document. She said, "Your Honor, I am here in connection with federal case number FI 2024 PRV Erzo 391, which intersects directly with several of the violations before this court. Mr. Ashworth's vehicle, a 2023 Lamborghini Huracan Evo, registered to Ashworth Capital Group, has been identified in connection with a hit-and-run incident on October 31st on Broad Street in Providence, 3 blocks from Rhode Island Hospital. The victim, Mr. James Whitmore, 67 years old, a retired city worker, was struck while walking home from the bus stop. He was transported to Rhode Island Hospital's emergency department with a fractured pelvis and 3 broken ribs. He was hospitalized for 12 days. She did not rush. She let every word land. We have paint transfer evidence on Mr. Whitmore's clothing matching Mr. Ashworth's front quarter panel. We have traffic camera footage from 11:08 p.m. that evening on Broad Street. We have phone records showing that at 11:14 p.m., Mr. Ashworth placed a 6-minute call to his father, Richard Ashworth Jr., followed immediately by a call to Mr. Craig Feldstein. No police report was ever filed. No one from Ashworth Capital Group contacted Providence Police. Mr. Whitmore was left on the ground and found by a passing couple at 11:23 p.m. The courtroom did not breathe. Mr. Whitmore spent 12 days recovering at Rhode Island Hospital. His care was provided by the emergency and recovery nursing staff of that institution. I looked at Maria Santos. She was staring at Agent Torres with her hand over her mouth. She may have walked past James Whitmore's room. She may have checked his chart. She may have been one of the nurses who made sure he had water at 3 in the morning. I said, "Mr. Ashworth, do you have anything to say?" He said nothing for a long moment. Then he looked at me and said something he clearly believed would help him. It was the worst thing he could have said. He said, "Your Honor, I think people are out to get my family because of who we are. My father is one of the most respected businessmen in Rhode Island. I refuse to be humiliated in a local traffic court by a setup orchestrated by bureaucrats. Local traffic court." I removed my glasses. I set them on the bench. I looked at Brandon Ashworth III for a long, quiet moment. 43 years, my father who worked in the textile mills of Providence with his hands. Every person who ever stood at that podium and told me the truth about their life. Every Maria Santos, every James Whitmore. I said very slowly, "Mr. Ashworth, I want you to look at that woman sitting in the front row. Her name is Maria Santos. She is 38 years old. She works nights at Rhode Island Hospital. She has 2 children at home. She came to my courtroom today over an $85 parking ticket she got at 2:47 in the morning while she was inside that hospital saving a child's life. She was afraid she could not pay it because her daughter had an ear infection and the co-pays had cleaned her out." I let that sit. "And you walked in this morning and posted on social media that this was below your pay grade. James Whitmore is 67 years old. He was walking home from a bus stop when your vehicle left him on the ground with a broken pelvis. He spent 12 days in the same hospital where Maria Santos works. She may have been in the hallway outside his room." I looked at Brandon. Then I looked at Maria. She was not looking at him with satisfaction. She was looking at him the way a nurse looks at a patient, with something that was impossible, almost impossibly, close to concern. That look broke through whatever wall was still standing in him. I could see it hit. If you are still watching this right now, you are part of a community of people who believe that a courtroom should be the one place on earth where a cashmere coat means nothing, and a pair of dark blue scrubs means everything. If this story is moving you, share it right now. Show someone who needs to see what justice looks like when it actually works. Because what I did next is something this court rarely does, and I want as many people as possible to witness it. I said, "The federal matters will be handled by Agent Torres and her office. That is outside my jurisdiction. What is inside my jurisdiction are 4 traffic violations and a contempt finding for your social media post this morning, which constitutes a public statement about an active proceeding in this courtroom." I went through each case. Case 2024 TR 8801, reckless operation, $500. Case 2024 TR 8802, failure to stop, $400. Case 2024 TR 8803, expired registration, $200. Case 2024 TR 8804, excessive speed in a hospital zone, $1,000. The maximum allowed under Rhode Island statute, plus a mandatory 60-day suspension of his driver's license, effective immediately. His attorney stood up. Your Honor, I must sit down, Mr. Feldstein. He sat down. On the contempt finding, Mr. Ashworth, you will perform 200 hours of community service. Those hours will be served as a volunteer orderly at Rhode Island Hospital. You will report directly to head nurse Patricia Coleman in the pediatric unit. You will work night shifts. You will do whatever the nursing staff assigns. You will push carts. You will change linens. You will sit with frightened children at 3 a.m. when their parents cannot be there. You will do this for 200 hours, and you will bring to it the same dignity that the people who work in that building bring to it every single day. The courtroom erupted, not in a chaotic way, in the way a room full of people erupts when they have just witnessed something absolutely right. Brandon Ashworth III stood there. The coat was still over his arm, the watch was still on his wrist, but he was not the same person who had walked in at 8:55 that morning. He was a 34-year-old man beginning, maybe for the first time in his life, to understand that the world is made of two kinds of people, the ones who make life harder and the ones who stay up all night making it better. And a judge had just told him, clearly and permanently, which one he was going to become, at least for the next 200 hours. Agent Torres gathered her documents. As she passed the front row, she stopped beside Maria Santos and said something quietly. Maria nodded. I asked Maria if she wanted to say anything before she left. She stood. She turned to face the room. She said, I just want everyone to know that every person at Rhode Island Hospital, every nurse, every aide, every tech, every doctor is doing the same thing I am doing. I am not special. I just did not want to lose $85. She paused. But thank you. This meant a lot. She picked up her folder with both hands and walked out of my courtroom with the same quiet dignity she had walked in with. The gallery watched her go. Mrs. Elaine Cooper patted her arm as she passed and whispered something. Maria nodded and smiled, just barely, and kept walking. I sat on the bench for a moment after the next case was called. I was thinking about my father, about the mills of Providence, about the kind of city and state and country we are still trying to build, about the fact that at 2:47 in the morning on a cold November night, while most of us were asleep, a woman in dark blue scrubs was keeping a child alive, and she would come into my courtroom the next day afraid she could not pay an $85 fine. Justice is not about punishment. Justice is about telling the truth in public. It is about standing up in a room full of people and saying, this person matters. What this person did in the dark, when no one was watching, when there was no camera and no applause and no reward, when the only audience was a child in a hospital bed and a machine keeping time on that child's heart, that matters more than any designer coat or any balance in any account on Westminster Street. More than any Instagram post, more than any last name. My father used to say, you find out who a person really is by how they treat the people who cannot do anything for them. Maria Santos treats every child in that hospital like they are the most important person in the world, not because it earns her anything, not because the money is good, because that is who she is. That is a hero. I have called many things in this courtroom over 43 years, but calling Maria Santos a hero, that is the easiest decision I have ever made from this bench. And so I want to close with something I want you to carry with you today. The next time you walk into a hospital, look at the nurses. They are carrying things you cannot see. Tired feet, long shifts, children at home, financial worry. And they are still there at 3 a.m. doing some of the hardest and most important work in the world. Do not take them for granted, not for one single minute. To everyone out there who gets up before the sun and comes home after dark and still finds a way to be kind, to be present, to give what little energy they have left to people who need it more, this bench sees you, this city sees you, and in my courtroom you will always be treated with the dignity you have earned. Justice is not blind. Justice sees everything, and sometimes on a cold Thursday morning in November, justice gets it exactly right. Thank you for watching this all the way through. That tells me something about you. It tells me you still believe that the right thing is worth seeing done. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it today. And if you want more stories from 43 years on this bench, real people, real decisions, real justice, then subscribe and stay close, because the next story I'm going to tell you is even more unbelievable than this one, and I mean that with everything I have. I will see you right back here very soon.